Welcome to Replenish Your Life, a space to discover how to embody your purpose, strengthen your intuition, and manifest who you truly are. I'm Lucy.
And I'm Morgan.
And we hope you're ready to embrace your divine design and replenish your life.
In today's episode, we're chatting with Karrie Myers Taylor. Karrie is an empowerment astrologer and astroeducator, specializing in educating people about how to use astrology to strategically plan for success in business, career, relationships, travel and relocation, and health and healing. Before becoming a full-time astrologer and coach, Karrie spent almost a decade as the creative director of Videokard, a professional video production company she created in 2012. Karrie's accurate intuition and real-world strategies, combined with a 10-plus year business background, has helped people across the globe bring their soul purpose down to earth and into the real world, manifesting the relationships, businesses, and mindsets they've always wanted. Her online readings, classes, and ongoing counseling sessions empower you with practical cosmic guidance to help you navigate your path and start living the life you were born to live.
So Karrie, hi. Thank you so much for being here with us on the podcast. We're very excited to speak with you.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I am just so excited to be alive at this point in history and to be able to share what's going on with people. So thank you for having me.
Oh, amazing. It's such a pleasure. So just to start out, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now?
Oh, goodness. I'm glad I'm talking to you right now, but it's not a coincidence. As an astrologer, I've just taken coincidences out of the equation altogether. It's never a coincidence. I am an empowerment astrologer, and what I do is I use astrology to empower people to live in alignment with their soul design, which is actually what brings them true fulfillment in life, which is what we've been searching for. This is why we're, in this great pinball game that we're in right now. And so, astrology's been around for a really long time. When I discovered it, I certainly wasn't discovering astrology by any means, but the way that I use it in this empowering way, that the points that I got attracted to in astrology, I could see there was this definite path that it was sending me on. And I could see the reason for the whole thing, and I really wanted to share it with people. So I've been practicing astrology for a while. I'm a full-time astrologer. I've had a full-time practice for the last 2 years, which became completely online this year due to so many different events. But what I'm working on right now is really starting to understand astrology as a means of helping you pivot to where you need to go into your life to align with where your soul has been taking you. But also to understand that astrology literally is the key to building self-esteem, building self-worth, which is, I believe, to be the root of so many of our issues on a global scale, individually and global. And so that's really where I am right now, is starting to make those connections to self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth, and how we can build them through our astrology chart. So yeah, that's my latest project.
Amazing. That's amazing. And yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. So when you first discovered astrology and as you started learning more and more about your chart and astrology, how did that influence the direction you took to becoming an astrologer?
Oh, absolutely. When I discovered astrology, I'd always really thought of astrology as a kind of a party game. And I'm a Leo. I'm a sun sign Leo. That's all I knew about myself. That's mostly what most people know about themselves, through their sun signs. And whenever I read horoscopes about Leos, I was just like, that's not me. I don't know. Okay, whatever. I didn't feel that too much in my life, right? But when I discovered astrology, I was at a part of my life where I was having a crossroads, where I had built a, very successful video production company on my own. And that was supposed to be my pinnacle. That was supposed to be like, when you get to this place, Carrie, everything falls in line, you're happy, you're this, you're that, So I had been on like a good, maybe 10, 20-year trajectory of like, I also had some health issues and I had weight issues. So it's like, when you lose weight, Carrie, all of this is going to fall into place. And when you, go to this school and get this degree, everything will fall into place. And then when you ultimately create your own business doing this thing, this will, fall into place. And I had reached all those things, I had lost over 100 pounds and changed my life, my diet, my nutrition, everything, my lifestyle. I had started this company. I was the CEO and creative director. I had staff, I had clients, and I was just miserable. And I was just like, what happened to the plan? Okay. And so I started seeing a therapist, as we often do when we're confused and, at a loss. And my therapist just happened to be an astrologer. And she opened my chart, and she, through a series of sessions, she introduced me to not only like who I actually am, right? But also why I had made certain decisions away from that person. She taught me about divine timing, which I think is something really important when we talk about astrology, is that there are certain times that are set up to be introduced to certain things. And so a lot of times we blame ourselves for like, why hasn't this happened yet? Or why haven't I done that yet? Or why don't I have the self-esteem yet? Or why am I still in this relationship? Or why am I still at this job? And it's like, astrology helped me understand that, there is such a thing as divine timing. And we are introduced to things as needed to go further along our soul path. And we don't, that's above my pay grade. I just tell you when it's supposed to happen, but, our job is to learn in the meantime. And focus and our chart tells us where we're supposed to focus in the meantime. So when I had that experience, it opened my world up, not only to astrology and just the timeline of this planet and all that we've been given, not only my personal design, my personal makeup that I could accept, and I had permission to fully accept parts of myself. But, I have a lot of Virgo in my chart. So I'm always like, well, how can I apply this in some way? Like, I'm not satisfied just knowing about it. Okay. So I was like, how can I apply this? And that's where empowerment astrology was born, because I wanted to help people not only see what's in their chart, accept it about themselves, fully own it and align with it, but also use it to make the next decisions in their lives. Because it's literally just a map, it's a guide, a life guide. Right. And so that's when empowerment astrology was born. And I also saw indications in my chart at that time that really told me I was supposed to be in retreat mode. I was actually not supposed to be, cover of every magazine, CEO, that thought I was supposed to be, of video production, whatever, that I was actually supposed to go be in nature, be in retreat, be in introspective meditative space. That was what that transit, which is a part of astrology that we call that period of time, is a transit. That particular transit was telling me I needed to go do that. So my partner, he and I, we moved. We left San Francisco. We moved up to the woods, just 30 minutes away. I call it the woods because I come from cities, so I'm like, if I see a tree, I think it's the woods, but it really wasn't the woods. Okay, but half an hour away in the trees. And I spent 5 years, healing myself, looking at my chart, developing an astrology practice. Because that's what I was supposed to be doing at that time.
That's so beautiful. I thank you for sharing that with us. It's so spot on, and I can really relate to so much of what you were saying. And I just want to circle back to what you were talking about with divine timing, because that is so in alignment with what we explore with Replenish Your Life and with the Replenishing Life project. And I was wondering if you could share with us, say someone wants to go beyond their standard horoscope, right?
Mm-hmm.
What other aspects of the chart would you look at for guidance to bringing that soul purpose or that soul path to life?
Well, there are parts, and keep in mind there are different types of astrology culturally, right? So I'm primarily a Western astrologer, but I also study Vedic astrology, Chinese astrology, Arabic astrology. I think it's important to have a understanding culturally what each of these things mean, right? Excuse me. So that said, when I talk about your soul purpose, I really look to the more ancient astrologies, right? Because the Western astrology is really more focused on your career and your, that kind of tangible stuff. Ancient astrology, like Vedic astrology, right? It's been around for a really long time. We're going to look at our North Node and our South Node on our charts, and you can look at your North Node and your South Node on your Western charts, same thing, but it comes from Vedic astrology, and Vedic astrology is called Rahu and Ketu. And the North Node in Chinese astrology, it's called the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. That would be the South Node and North Node.
Okay.
So the South Node represents, there are many different ways to think about it. I'm a practical astrologer. So I always, kind of lay it out for people who have different, sensitivities to that type of thing. But so the South Node represents the beginning of your life, the beginning of your physical life, the environment that you were born into, that you became familiar with and comfortable with, and or it represents the residue from the most previous life.
Right.
If you want to take a more spiritual understanding of it. And what it really just means is that what you brought into this world, what you were born into, your broth, the stew you were cooking in. And then around, 36, I would say 36 to 42 years old, this is when the North Node is activated. The North Node and the South Node are always different signs and different opposite signs and opposite houses. And I know this, I'll talk a little bit about what houses mean. Houses represent different areas of life. So in astrology, there are 12 houses that represent different areas of life. So the South Node is the energy, the sign that you were born into, the area of life that you're kind of expert at. And then around 36 to 42 is when we get our North Node activated, and when we want the exact opposite of what we were born into and what we wanted in life. And it's very jarring for us because it's the exact opposite of what we've known and what we've been striving for and building for all this time. Our parents told us was our priority, what our society, our culture told us was our role that we were meant to play. This gets activated, and we, in astrology, it's called the North Node activation. In the rest of the world, it's called a midlife crisis. And then,
right.
yes. And then we head on off to the North Node. And so, I have quite a few younger, I would say, younger clients who aren't even near that point, but they feel guided towards it. I mean, I have a lot of younger clients because I really specialize in Saturn returns and how to work with that. So that's a 27, 28-year-old person who I work with often, but they can feel it already, even at that time, this pull towards the exact opposite of what they have known. And that North Node is really your soul purpose. It's I call it the hero's journey. It's like, the book. If we each were a storybook, the North Node would be the end of it. And wherever the North Node is transiting, whichever house, whichever area of life it's transiting right now, tells you what page you're on in that book and how close you are to finishing. So we actually, we are meant to be on that course. But it also represents, we talk about how people have this desire to pivot and change and different careers and all of that. That's simply a North Node activation. When you're familiar with your chart with your North Node, all these serendipitous things line up and you just go with it. The grief and the stress about why I'm changing is just not necessary.
Wow, it's beautiful.
And so do you bring the South Node into like what you're doing in the North Node, or is it kind of like you leave that behind and start fresh?
Well, it's absolutely about a balance. The entire chart is about balancing. And also something that I like to bring up for people is that, we think a sign is an opposite and that it's a bad thing, right? It's like, oh, Leo is this and Aquarius is the opposite of that. And so these are opposites and opposites attract, but they really have nothing to do with each other. That's not true. When two signs are opposite, this means that the signs have the same goal, just different methods of getting there. And so when you are working with a South Node, North Node, you are simply being asked to choose a different method of getting to the same place. And you're asked to balance these two things. So true success with your North Node is when you're able to balance what you know with what you're learning, what you're growing into.
Ah, beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, that makes sense.
Do you like what? Yeah, I'm interested in your North Node now.
Yeah, Lucy and I both have Leo North nodes.
Oh, okay. So I'm a Leo, so obviously I have something to do with your past.
Yes.
Yeah. So okay, well that's very interesting. That's good. Good to know about that, balancing the two. Okay, I just want to talk about astrology and healing. So I've heard a lot of people that use astrology for healing purposes. And so how have you used astrology to heal aspects of your life? Like, what does that look like? You could share.
That is, that's the main reason I've used astrology, especially in the beginning. Now I'm an astrologer, I'm a business astrologer. I work with matchmaking astrology. I do, travel and relocation astrology. I do all kinds of different types of astrology. But in the beginning, it was primarily to heal myself. I had no intention of becoming an astrologer. In fact, I didn't tell anybody I was studying astrology. I don't know anything about that, right? Because I didn't want anybody to know I was doing anything weird, right? But I used it for healing because when I saw, I was seeking a therapist to heal myself, right? And I'd used therapy throughout my life, at different points, which I think that's what it's for. Use it at different points in your life. You stumble across roads, you go see a therapist to help you work you through that. But this therapist was showing me lifelong issues that I've been dealing with, that I was able to see on my chart, through symbols. And also why certain periods of time I was introduced to different therapies to help me with that. But when I was going to see that therapist in the beginning, I was really concerned for my mental health. I had never experienced some of the cracking of ego that I was experiencing at that point. That level of despair of just I've reached my pinnacle. I really do not know what else I'm supposed to do here. I thought I was going to have to start using antidepressants or something. And so I went to a therapist as kind of a last ditch to help me because I really didn't want to have to start doing that. I started using pharmaceuticals, but I didn't see another way. When I started being able to witness the parts of my chart, that's where the healing began, because it was like this deep acceptance of who I am and what I've been through, what I've experienced. But it also allowed me to look at where I had laid blame in my life. It was like the story I had told myself as a means of dealing with pain. Helped me to forgive my parents. That's a big one in astrology. Being able to forgive your parents, to recognize them as souls that are simply chess pieces. It's like we love them and we're family and we come to each other for a reason, but every person is simply you're the story, basically. Every other person is a player within that story and a chess piece. And when they come into your life, they're meant to awaken you, awaken a part of you that you're not looking at. And so there's no more blame for the ex-boyfriends. There's no more blame for, the parents that didn't blah, blah, blah. There's no more blame for why was I in that place at that time? Or there's no more blame for me, because you look at your chart and you're able to see this is my original design. This is my recipe. This is what I was meant to bring into the world. And this is the path that I am going on to get there. I don't get to choose that path. And so there was a healing that came from that acceptance of it. And then this excitement about, ooh, I am on a path. I have been this entire time. And it's absolutely okay to go in this direction that I'm intuitively feeling. A lot of times when I do readings with people, I often tell them, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. And that is part of that acceptance and being witnessed by someone else is what makes astrology so healing.
It's very powerful. Wow. So where would be a good place to start for someone to look at their chart and begin this incredible healing journey that you're talking about?
I think that, well, every astrologer has their expertise. I think that I personally think every person should be born and like assigned an astrologer, because you're born and this, because I mean, literally I would, if I had known half of this stuff before, life would have been very, I say life would have been different, but it wouldn't have. So I personally feel like it's every person has their place to would have a different place to start. Every astrologer would say a different place to start. For me, because I have 12th house placements and I have 8th house placements. Okay, Jupiter in the 8th house, so and a Scorpio North Node. So I was always meant to go on this more esoteric, occult way, but I have a lot of Virgo, so I was also meant to make it practical, make it something that can be used. So I always start with those places. I always start with the 12th house. The 12th house represents the area of life that is our unconscious. So the parts of us that we don't understand, this is where we self-sabotage. This is 99% of the time why people come to me is like, why can't I make myself do such and such, right? It's usually because they've got something going on in the 12th house. The 8th house is another great place to start. And that represents our shadows and the psychological parts of us that we're aware of. They're part of our conscious, but just like a shadow, we try to keep it back here, but just like a shadow, it's always there, right? So the 8th house is where our psychological healing, sexual healing, a lot of things that have to do with just the darker parts, our jealousy, our shame, our insecurities, all that part of ourselves. 8th house is a great place to look. I always look at Chiron. Chiron represents our wounded healer and the place of our original psychological wound, and how we can heal other people, heal our own wound by healing other people who have similar wounds. But I also think the astrologer Shawnee Nicholson, so I'm a big fan of her. She has a great book out called You Were Born for This. I think it was You Were Born for This. And that book really focuses on the sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign. And I think that's a really ultimate place for super beginners to start off with, is knowing those particular placements.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's very powerful. And it sounds like that 8th house, 12th house, Chiron, I feel a lot of intensity there, but a lot of room for power for healing and transformation even there. Okay. So a lot of people I'm hearing, and is like struggling maybe with manifesting prosperity. And, I feel this is maybe connected to the healing. So is there something, that we could look to our astrology for? How do we bring more abundance into our lives and prosperity? And could you talk to us about that?
Yeah, those were, that was what I was looking for too, and I think what's really fun when you can look on your chart for abundance and prosperity, because it also gives you an understanding of perspective of what's already been there the whole time. A lot of times we go looking for abundance, prosperity, because we don't think we have any, that we haven't experienced it and everyone else got some and we just weren't there that day, to get our portion. But with astrology, this is again why I think it's such a healer, because you're able to see oh yeah, I've been actually in this area of life, I've been getting abundance hands over fist, right? So the places that I look in terms of lifelong abundance in my natal chart, I look for where Jupiter is. The sign Jupiter is in. which I know both of you have Jupiter and Virgo.
Right. Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about that. And then also the house that Jupiter's in, right? So I assume that you both have different houses, actually, that
We
Jupiter's
do.
in. So, okay. And so this is lifelong abundance. When I think about Jupiter, and this isn't, I always have an empowering interpretation of it. Jupiter is the largest planet in our known universe. Therefore, it has a gravitational pull that's massive. And whenever I talk about, Jupiter, I talk about the moons of Jupiter. For the Earth, we have a gravitational pull. We're a much smaller planet. So we have one moon that we pull into our orbit, and it hangs out with us, right? Because it's pulled into us. But Jupiter has 79.
Wow.
And when you start to think about that, you start to recognize the role that Jupiter plays in your life. What do you effortlessly magnetize towards yourself with no, like in your sleep, basically. And this is also why it's so easy for people to not recognize the abundance that's already there, because it comes so easily, And so wherever Jupiter is in your chart gives you an understanding of, this is where my abundance comes from, But the house placement is always important too, because this is the area of life where this Jupiter magnetism manifests. And then when you look at your transit, you can look at where Jupiter is transiting in your chart and say, oh, this is the area of life where I'm really lucky. So I can make things happen in this area of life.
Right.
So this is how, we always want to go towards where we're manifesting, because oftentimes people want to have an astrology reading and it's like, what's wrong? Like, wah, wah, and it's like, okay, yeah, what's wrong? I can tell you what's wrong all day long if that's what you want to hear. But let's talk about what's right, because that's actually happening with your eyes closed, so let's focus on that. And then you also, when we talk about things like money, everyone wants to know where money's coming from, or attraction or love, we want to look at Venus. Where does your natal placement of Venus? How Venus tells us how we attract things into our life, and also what we're attracted to. And then the house placement tells you which area of life that you kind of effortlessly bring that attraction, bring that. And really, that's what currency is, right?
Yeah.
Currency is about attracting something towards yourself. And so Venus is very much about, when you look in your chart and you're able to see like how you attract something into your life, it always ends up being currency. It's also about value too, because Venus represents self-value as well. So there is this, the more you value yourself, the more you attract into your life, the more currency you attract. So it's those two placements, I would say Venus and Jupiter are really the benevolent places for abundance.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I love how they kind of dance together. So let's talk a little bit about, just from a purely personal perspective. We both have Jupiter in Virgo. My Jupiter is in the 7th house in Virgo, and Morgan's is
the third.
The 3rd house. So what does that mean for us?
Okay, and these are your natal placements, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So Jupiter and Virgo. Jupiter, if we break it down and we talk about, what Jupiter is, Jupiter means expansion of something on a large level. Like in Greek mythology, Jupiter was Zeus, right? The god of all, the god of everything, the largest god. So this is abundance on a massive level. It also can represent gluttony. Okay, when we're talking overdoing it.
Right,
okay?
yeah.
So we gotta always take that part of it. There's a higher octave and a lower octave of every sign, okay? And every planet. So when you have Jupiter in Virgo, the Virgo energy is very much a producer. I always call Virgos the generals of the zodiac. Our Aries are our soldiers. They just run into battle. They don't care why they're there. They just want to fight, okay? But the Virgos are the ones who make the battle plan. They're the ones that are, they are the ones who plan it, organize it, structure it, go over it, spend nights up going over it, making sure it's perfect so that the Aries soldiers get out of the battle alive. The whole point of the Virgos are the MVPs, I would say, of the zodiac, because they are trying to get us there to our highest ideal, and often Virgos get a bad rap. I have 3 planets in Virgo, by the way, so I'm always going to stand for Virgos. I'm just going to be like, you know what?
Yeah.
Deal with it. I'm trying to make you better. Okay. Virgos are, every sign in the zodiac has a different element that it's represented by, usually an animal or an element, air, that kind of thing. But Virgo is the only symbol that is represented by an angel. And that's because the Virgo energy is a divine energy. It sees the highest potential of everything and every situation. And it simply wants you to rise to your highest level.
Mm-hmm.
Us mere mortals don't understand that. We think it's judgment and criticism, right? We're just like, because they can't see what you see, basically. So when you have Jupiter with Virgo, there is this abundance of needing people to rise to their highest level. It's like you're just a walking life coach, and everything, that tree could be in a better place. Like that person could be, could dress better. It's just like you just are full of ideas, okay, of how things could be improved, which is wonderful in terms of like producing something, actually getting the job done. There are people who would, kill to have a Jupiter and Virgo placement because they don't know how to organize it. They don't know how to get the wheels turning. They don't know how to do it. Now, again, Jupiter there means there's an overabundance of it sometimes, right? And just kind of like, well, I work at this level, so why can't you? And so, yeah, take that into account as well.
Yes.
I often do. My partner is a Pisces. I'm often having to go, that's you. I don't always have to give you advice, right? So when you have Jupiter and Virgo in the seventh house represents our intimate partnerships, right? It also represents our family members, our close business partners. Seventh house is about commitments that we've made, verbal or otherwise, and commitments that we've made to other people and they have made to us. The seventh house is the first house in the zodiac, the first area of life that includes another person. Every house up until then is just about us and our own personal development, our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings. Seventh house is the first time we include someone else in our sphere. And so when you have Jupiter and Virgo in the seventh house, one, you tend to have an abundance of partners or people committed to you or feel responsible for quite a few people. Yes. Because you're trying to improve everybody. So I have so many people to help, right? And that you're committed to helping them. So there tends to be, a lot of people that come into your life that you could help, basically, that you end up helping. And they're committed to you. And you're committed to their growth as well. And it also makes it a really great position for if you ever wanted to go into business with a partner. This is kind of the ultimate, success placement for something like that. Awesome. Now, Jupiter and Virgo in the third house, it's very funny because it's exactly what we're doing right now. The third house is the communications and media house. So when you have Jupiter in the third house, there is this desire to have your voice out in the world, and you do it very well. You have Virgo there, so you're able to produce media, writing, publishing, speaking very well. And almost an exalted, I would say, exalted level. Again, recognize that not everyone else could do it at this exalted level, okay? But that's what you're meant to do. And like I said, there are people who would pay to have these placements. I remember when my Jupiter in third house, I was just like, oh, can't wait for this Jupiter in third house, man. I'm just about to, because I could not speak. I could not be seen. I was having a hard time even putting myself out there in publications and media. And as soon as that Jupiter in third house transit came, I was making videos. I was, Instagram, all this other stuff. But until then, I was just like a little mouse, not really involved in social media or publishing or anything like that. So that's where your personal manifestation comes from, and it will be here for your lifetime.
Wow. Well, thank you. And just it's interesting because actually I really relate to what you were saying as, it's only really putting myself out there or even doing like videos and stuff with Lucy. That's only sort of happened in the last, maybe a little like year or two, not even. And I was actually, wasn't great at putting myself out there. So it's been a process, and maybe that's some other areas in my chart that have would indicate that. But that's interesting, just to know that I have it natally, like it's there for.
Yes, it's usually awakened in transit. So it's kind of like a gift that you had that you didn't really know how to access. I mean, I when I think about the people who have had Jupiter in third house, they tend to have been, well, it's interesting because they usually they tend to be people who are like Geminis, you know, who are really good with speaking, but it's not been activated yet. It's not been awakened yet. It needs to be awakened through a transit. Then that's when the full outpouring could happen. So I'd have to look at your chart and see what transit was happening like a year ago. I'd be really interested in seeing that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So speaking of transits, so how can we use astrology to plan for the future?
Great question. So the first word I'm going to eliminate is plan.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, great question,
Virgo
but,
influence.
yeah. Well, you know, I mean, being an astrologer, I've come to the conclusion that part of my job is completely redoing the dictionary, because our words just simply don't. They just don't match to where we're going, you know, in the world, and so our entire lexicon has to be created for this stuff. So in terms of like the way I look at a transit. And how to, you know, quote unquote, plan for your future is that I look at transits like high school. You know, there are 12 houses. And so think of them as 12 classes that you're supposed to take. And when the bell rings, another planet is moving into a different house. So that means you're going to a new class with a new teacher, new classmates, new experiences, new homework, new syllabus, okay? And so you're there for however long that planet's transit is. Now, if it's the planet's Pluto, you're there for a good decade, right? Yeah. If the planet's Mercury, you got 3 weeks in that class, you know, aces, right? So it's in terms of planning, it's kind of like the way you plan your syllabus when you're going to college or high school. It's like, these are the classes I'm going to take this year. So you still get to decide how well you do in those classes. You still have free will, but yeah, in terms of planning, no, you don't get to plan which class you're going into, or who's going to be there. But you do get to have an understanding of like, for instance, you know, I have right now I have a Jupiter transit to my fourth house. Jupiter represents expansion, luck, and wealth often. Fourth house represents the home environment. So, you know, I knew going into this year, Jupiter transits are about a year to 13 months, depending on how large your house is. I knew that I would probably be moving, you know, probably be experiencing, you know, some abundance in real estate. You know, I had a client that had a Jupiter in the fourth house transit. She's Canadian, and she decided to just take off for a year and only live in like guest houses. Like she just, you know, put out something to people and said, I want to travel the world. Do you have a house I could stay in? She had a bunch of people that showed up, was like, I know somebody, you can stay at my house, you can stay at house. So she travels the world for a year, doesn't pay rent at all. Wow. When we did her reading, we like, you know, she added up how much money she had saved and in real estate, and it was like $60,000 something dollars, right? Wow. And so that was her Jupiter in the fourth house. So it can show up in different ways, right? But it always has to do with an abundance in the area of the home environment or real estate or property. Right now, you know, I didn't begin this year thinking I was going to be moving, but my partner and I are in the process of doing that right now, and selling our home and moving. So this is what I'm saying. That's how it shows up. And so I knew that this is what I knew that I was going to have some real estate abundance this year, and I thought it was going to show up in, you know, or I'm going to do a remodel on my house, you know, but different abundance, you know, it can show up in different ways, but it always has to do with these different areas. It always has to do with the area of Jupiter and the fourth house and that kind of thing. So when you look on your chart, you can look at, you know, different planets, what they mean and which house they're going to be going into. So if you have Jupiter going into a certain place, you can expect really effortless abundance in that area of life for that period of time, right? If Pluto is going into a certain place, you can expect some upheaval, some major transformation, some power plays, some control issues, some having to surrender to what is unknown, in that area of life. If you have something floating into your second house, which is the house of Taurus, you can expect some wealth, some money, unless it's Saturn. Gotta pay attention to which planets are going there.
Okay.
So if you have a Mercury transit, where Mercury tells you what you're going to be thinking about, what's going to be on your mind. Mercury in the third house is communications. This is usually when people publish their books. When Mercury goes in, finally publish that book or get that book seen, or when something goes into the seventh house. This is usually when people can expect intimate things happening with their partnerships. Their intimate partnerships. When things are going into the ninth house, this is the house of Sagittarius and travel. This is usually when people travel globally out in the world. So, of course, taking into account other planets that are going on in different houses, this is how you can kind of understand and what we call predictive astrology. And I did air quotes, but predictive astrology, where it's like, I have an idea of what my year is going to look like. And for everybody, you have your own chart, but then you also have the Earth's chart, right? So, the Earth, and we are inhabitants of this Earth. We are renters. We are simply renters here. Okay. So, we have our own chart and our own soul path, but the Earth has its. So what we're experiencing global astrology right now, it's so important to look at your own chart, because you have to stay focused on your soul path, regardless of what's going on with the Earth right now.
I love the way that you talk about the transits and how your take on it is so empowering. It seems like, if you look on social media, and it can feel sometimes like there's another retrograde every other week, right? But I love the way that you're describing it, and that you're inviting people to really use astrology to empower themselves with the knowledge of the transits. I love that. Yeah,
absolutely. And retrograde is not a bad word,
right?
We're in one right now, and let's change retrograde to pause, an invitation to pause, and an invitation to redirect, right? We're in a Mars retrograde right now, which a lot of people are like, Mars and retrograde, but Mars represents our energy and what we're putting our energy into. And some of us were putting our energy in the wrong direction. That wasn't feeding our soul. It wasn't on our soul path. So here Mars comes along and says, I'm going to give you a nice pause button so you can think about what you've done. and some things are going to slow down, so that you have to think about, is this the best place to put my energy? And a lot of people will be awakening to that during this transit. Mars goes direct November 13th. So we've got some time.
Okay, that's awesome. I love that. That's so beautiful. So we've seen on your Instagram, Carrie, that you're talking about the transit of Uranus and Taurus. Okay, and that seems pretty significant, right? So can you tell us about the impact of this transit and what to expect?
Well, Uranus and Taurus, I think it's one of my favorite ones. Like I said, I'm really glad to be alive at this particular time in history, just even as an astrologer, because we literally get to see the things that we've been studying happening right before our eyes. So it's a special treat for us, I think, even though maybe not for everybody else, but it's a special treat for us. So Uranus and Taurus, we're already in Uranus and Taurus, and it's a good 7-year transit. It came in almost 2 years ago. And so Uranus, whenever we do astrology, I like to break it down into like a math equation. It's like, what's Uranus and what's Taurus? All right. So Uranus represents the future. It represents awakenings. It represents rebellion. It represents breaking from the status quo, not doing things traditionally. It represents liberation, because wherever we have Uranus in our chart, and you might want to look on your charts where you have Uranus natally, this is where you will be liberated in your lifetime. It's a place where you secretly want to be liberated, but you don't know how to go about doing it. And so Uranus represents sudden awakenings. It's like we don't change until we suddenly have to. That's usually how change happens, right? It's not, if we're given the opportunity of it being gradual, we won't do it. So Uranus comes along and says, I'm going to help you out. Okay. I'm going to wake you up over here so that you can change this thing you've been yearning for. Doesn't feel like it at the time, but the thing you've been yearning for will now suddenly has energy to flow. It has energy to actually happen. So Uranus means a sudden awakening. And so what does Taurus mean? Taurus means stability, security, like an opposite, okay? It means, groundedness. It means material goods, material things. Taurus is an earth sign, so it also means agriculture, things that have to do with the earth, the environment, okay? Taurus also is a very sensual sign. It has to do with the five senses. So it's awakening to our senses, right? Awakening to our need to have connection with our planet, with our earth. But again, astrology is about balance. So it's not a seesaw. We're meant to balance these two things. So Uranus also represents the future. It represents technology in this day and age. So Uranus and Taurus is how we will go about balancing our traditions with our technology.
Wow.
And so this is part of moving into the age of Aquarius, which will happen in this decade. And it's about the moving into, the future, basically moving into a time when we will move away from the age of Pisces, which was very much about religion, institutionalized religion, and how we find God or creator, or whomever you believe that to be, how we find that outside of ourselves, how we connect to that through temples and popes and things like that. And the age of Aquarius is about how we will recognize that God lives within us and that we have access to it and the creative and the collective, that we are all connected. And so it's an awakening to a much more of a unified planet. And so you have to break with tradition in order to awaken to the new way of being, the new understanding. And so that's what Uranus and Taurus is about. And what we'll see is a lot of ways, we're seeing it already, that we will start to use technology to uphold our traditions. So we're seing that right now through how we're having to use Zoom to have Thanksgiving, or we're having to, we'll see a lot more technological advances in terms of food and how we produce food. We'll see a lot more technological advances in terms of taking care of our planet and climate change. So this is about how we use technology to keep up our species and to reconnect to our planet after so much separation from it.
Yeah. Oh, how beautiful. That is, I like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. And I feel that the world it wouldn't have been good to keep going in that certain direction. And that we do need to take a look at things and definitely improve a lot of what we're doing to care for the earth and for each other. And so, wow, that's pretty beautiful. Thank you. So I would like to, would you share with our listeners what your sun, moon, and rising signs are?
Yes. Gosh, like I said, I'm quite proud of my sun, moon, and rising, but when I first found them, I was so confused.
Yeah.
What is this? So my sun sign is in Leo. I'm a Leo sun sign, which is a fire sign. My moon sign is in Cancer, which is a water sign. And my rising is in Libra, which is an air sign. And so, yes, none of that makes sense, right? It's but what's fascinating about it, because in astrology, we have things called exalted positions, right? So the sun is exalted in Leo, the moon is exalted in Cancer. And so also these two signs are traditionally in astrology, I don't like to use gender roles so much, but they're, the sun is a masculine energy traditionally, and the moon is a feminine. And then the Libra is the balancer of the two. And I think that's what's been really interesting for me to recognize in my life. I would say astrology is, I think a lot more women are interested in astrology. It's like women are just more receptive to some of these things. But I have so many male clients, and I was always wonder, like, what is that about? And I'm starting to see with my sun, moon, and rising, I'm like, there is this balancing of the masculine and the feminine that I think that I bring to the surface for people. They feel very comfortable that I'm able to dance in these two archetypes and balance them pretty well. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And that's, that's your sun, moon, and rising. You present as a balancer of things, basically.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. So Carrie, where can people find you?
Oh gosh. Well, you can find me on my website. That's where most people schedule their readings through my website. I have my calendar on there. You can take a look at that. I also am pretty active on Instagram. I like to put a lot of stuff on there and do some IG lives every once in a while. And I have a weekly like kind of astrology forecast where I talk about each week what's coming in and how you can prepare. I call it like astrology prep, how you prep for your astrology. And then I'm also over the next 3 months going to be expanding my YouTube channel because I had been, I was trying to look, like I was hesitating about the YouTube channel because I wanted to definitely have what's the different type of astrology that I want to put on here? Because there's lots of stuff about astrology on YouTube. But I really wanted people to understand about how to take care of themselves with astrology. That's why on my Instagram, I'm called Self-Carrie, right?
Yes.
Because that's the whole point, you are the story. So as long as you take care of your story, it goes the right way, And so I really, for my YouTube channel, I'm really planning to bring a lot more videos over the next 3 months that help you use your personal astrology, like how to heal certain aspects in your astrology, how to use holistic practices and meditations and different types of herbs and flower essences and things like that can actually target the way I have throughout my entire life. Like I never did use those pharmaceuticals. I started creating holistic practices to deal with some of the more challenging aspects of my chart. I want to bring that to people to help them build their self-confidence, their self-esteem through astrology. And so that's where you can see all that stuff. That'll be coming to YouTube.
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. And we'll put all your links and everything in the show notes so people can click on those and check them out. And yeah, so I love that you talk about healing and how and helping others to find how they can heal themselves. And so one question we like to ask all our guests is, what replenishes you?
Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I have a skincare routine. This is literally what replenishes me. And I actually suggest that everybody adopt this. I know it's, when the quarantine hit, it was like, choose your addiction, and mine was skincare, okay? What am I gonna have delivered constantly to my house? Pajamas and skincare. But anyway, I have a skincare routine morning and night. It replenishes me. I light a candle, I play my K-pop, and I just, massage my face. I do all my face stuff. And there's just something there is so nurturing and so, just so loving. And I spend this time with my body. And I think, because when we went on quarantine and we went on Zoom, I was looking at my face all the time. And I was just like, what's going on? And so I started getting addicted to skincare, right? But I found through this, there's a confidence that comes with knowing at the beginning of the morning, I take this time to take care of myself. At the end of the night, I make it a really wonderful, sensual experience, and it's me time. And then I wake up and I'm ready to face the day. There's so many more metaphors in there, But yeah, and so that's what replenishes me.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing with us, and such a good reminder as well. Amazing. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing your wisdom and your insights. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. I've had so much fun. Thank you for allowing me to share this with people. Like I said, my goal is to have every person born with their personal astrologer, and I'm going to get to it because I have Uranus conjunct my North Node. Going to happen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
If you'd like to learn more about Carrie Myers Taylor, you can go to km-taylor.com, follow her on Instagram at selfcarrie, on her Facebook page, Self-Care Carrie, or on her YouTube channel at Self-Carrie. For complete episode show notes and all of the links mentioned throughout this episode, check out replenishyourlife.buzzsprout.com. For more information on classes, meditations, and community events to help you replenish your life, and to sign up to receive bi-monthly transformational content, check out bit.ly/replenishing life. You can also find us by searching for Replenishing Life Project on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review for the Replenish Your Life podcast. In our next episode, we're talking with Alex Cantone, all about reparenting your inner child, having better relationships, and understanding your primary health system using human design.